Now, a very important thing to talk about is to clear up some doubts that people can come up and say, well, Quran and Sunnah, Quran and Hadith are filled with knowledge. We know what is there in the Quran. We know what is there in Hadith. We have books. We know what the Hadith say. We know what Allah says in the Quran. We have tafsir books. We have everything. Then why do you need to go to someone who's going to say something, and you're obliged to follow him? Like, why would you do that? Okay, everything is clear. Then why follow an imam? So the answer is this: that the rulings are three types. There are three types of rulings. Number one, the ruling is that it deals with aqidah. It deals with the belief system. Okay. Number two, the second type of ruling is something that is mentioned in the Quran explicitly. Explicitly, like it's so clear that anybody can understand it. And the third thing is that it's not mentioned. It's mentioned in the Quran and Sunnah, but it's not explicit. It's implicit. So you have to dig a little bit deeper. You have to do some research before you understand the true meaning of those Quran or Hadith or those ayah or the ahadith. Right. So that's the third type. The first type was what? Aqidah. First type was the belief system. So let's talk about aqaid. What is aqaid? Aqaid is your belief system, right? It doesn't have to do with amal. It doesn't have to do with any action. It's just your belief system. It's just dealing with your insides, right? So aqidah, for example, like Allah is one. Allah is wahid. Wahdahu la sharika lah. There is no partners for Allah. You do not need to do any taqleed for this masala. You don't need to do any taqleed for this ruling because it's obvious. Quran says, "Qul huwa Allahu ahad, Allahu samad, lam yalid wa lam yulad, wa lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad." That Allah is singular. There is no partners for Allah. He's not born anybody. He's not born from anybody, nor anybody's born from him. And you know the translation of Surah Ikhlas, right? So you know Qul huwa Allahu ahad, that Allah is one. So if we're not following any imam when he says Allah is one, we're not doing taqleed. We're not like, okay, I'm not going to ask for proof that why is Allah one. Obviously, like he's going to tell you that, okay, look, Qul huwa Allahu ahad. You're believing that Allah is one because of Qul huwa Allahu ahad, not because of the qawl of an imam, right? Qawl of an imam doesn't work over here in aqidah. If he says something else, if he says Allah is not one, then obviously he's not even going to remain a Muslim because he's rejecting the Quran. So he's not even going to be a mujtahid. So there is no ijtihad, there is no imam, there is no taqleed in the aqaid. There is no taqleed in the aqaid. Remember this is very important because this is something people can ask you that why are you doing taqleed when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says Qul huwa Allahu ahad and your imam, your mujtahid says, oh, believe Allah is one. You're not believing what the imam is saying, you're believing what the Quran is saying. He's just like referring you back to the Quran, and that's how you believe that Allah is one. So that's very clear, right? Now the second part was something that's mentioned explicitly in the Quran. That's the second type of ruling. The first one was aqidah. The second type is something that's mentioned in the Quran explicitly. For example, salah is fard upon you, right? So that is very simple, very straightforward, very clear. You don't need any ijtihad, you don't need to dig any deeper. And then in the hadith it says there's 5 salah, 5 times prayer. So that's fard upon you. That's the raka'at of the namaz. That there's 2 sunnahs and 2 fard in the fajr. There's 4 sunnah, 4 fard, 2 sunnah and 2 nafal in the zohar salat. So stuff like this is very clear. You don't need to do any ijtihad. You don't need to do any research. You just know the hadith. You just know the ayah, and you can follow it. So if someone says that no, there's no 5 times prayer, there's 4 times prayer. Again, he's not going to remain a mujtahid. He's not going to remain an imam. Nobody's going to believe him. Nobody's going to even let him do any research because he's going against the norm. He's going against what's mentioned in the Quran and Hadith. Right? So this is the second type. Now, the third type is that something that's not mentioned in the Quran and Hadith explicitly. It's implicit. Right? It's implicit. So for example, the implicit stuff, some examples of that is like, does blood nullify wudu? Like if you start bleeding, would it nullify your wudu? Would touching a woman itself, like if you're just touching a woman, if you're just touching your wife or something, would that break your wudu? Right? That's the question. That you don't see explicit stuff in the Quran. Even if you think it's explicit, there is some other thing that says otherwise. There's some other hadith or there's some other ayah that goes against it. So you know that either the first one, that hukum is not there anymore, or it means something else. Then there's interpretation. So now you need to do more research, right? And who's going to do research? The mujtahid is going to do research. We don't have enough ability to do the research. Another thing is like eating is lobster. To eat lobster is a halal. Right? To eat a rabbit is a halal. So again, like Quran doesn't explicitly say yes or no. You have to do more research. You have to look at the qawl of Sahabi. You have to look at more ahadith, and you have to like understand the interpretation. You have to know the usage of the language to know what's what and how do we apply these ahkam.